Hello, hello, hello from the airport hotel next to the airport in Oslo. Just about to head off to Tromsø tomorrow, and I'm waiting for my love, and I'm very excited. So that inspired me to talk about how love is more than being nice to people. Love is actually loving God above all else so that you can love others, right, as a neighbor and as yourself, right? That's really the philosophy that I want to live by, because how am I to love someone truly, authentically, from a great depth if I don't draw upon the source of the love from God? Because the kind of love that comes from oneself can often be conditional. And you know this, right? You might have conditions for why it is that you love someone, that they ought to treat you a certain way, and they need to meet your expectations and your wants and your desires and everything. And I'm here to tell you that love is more than just that. And love is more than being nice to people. It's also not about people pleasing at all. So God knows that only people who love God above all else will ever love their neighbors as themselves. And it is only when God is in his rightful place in my heart that you will be in the appropriate place in my life. If you put someone or something on a pedestal, that's an idol. And you then begin holding them accountable to things that only God can do for you, truly. The eternal love that is already present with you, always. And so that is why we need to be aware of where we keep people, right? Where are they in this sort of like, I would say, hierarchy? And then you might be like, well, I don't abide by hierarchies, but it's so necessary that we understand this, because if we don't have God as the eternal source of love and that we draw upon that in our relationships with others, we're going to put our partners, our friends, our family up here, and we're going to be down here. Or maybe we perceive ourselves to be above them, right? But if we look at it in a different way, then we will be able to love others and treat others with a different kind of love that has a sort of non attachment to it, if that makes sense. So, all of this is because if God is not in his rightful place, guess who I will insert in that place? The answer to that is very easy. That is myself. I'm going to put myself in the center. And we got to be so careful with this, because what then happens is that we then have a sense of pride. We then have a sense of ego. And obviously it's necessary to be able to have boundaries. Yes. But it's a totally different thing if it becomes about the self and the self only. Because now we begin having a lot of expectations that we put on other people around us as to how they ought to treat us. And now we're not able to experience receiving and giving love eternally, unconditionally. This is why we're striving for unconditional love, right? But we only experience conditional love simply because we put people and things on pedestals instead of God. And this is the key. It's being able to draw upon love from a different source than just ourselves. Because you do know, right? That at times you'll be like, I don't know if I can love this person. I feel like they're treating me like shit. I feel like they're not meeting my needs, my desires, my wants. And what is the key there? Pay attention. It's putting ourselves in the center of things. So that's what I'm aiming at here. And I want to come back to the fact that love is also more than being nice to people. And the thing here is that if we do not have God as sort of the one that we draw upon love from, we are going to fall into people pleasing, and we're going to draw upon love that comes from ourselves only. And that can become extremely exhausting, like super exhausting. And it will exhaust you to the point where you will doubt whether you can do this, because it's so much easier to just keep a track of and love yourself, right? It's actually one of the most courageous things to love another person, but we need to be aware of where it comes from. And that it comes from not people pleasing in this sense of perfectionism and us sculpting ourselves and having ourselves like on this sort of pedestal, needing to be a certain way in order to approve of or to abide to others, but that it's a sense of it comes from a different place. It doesn't come from that place of I'm deserving of this. It's more I'm worthy of this, and I choose to draw upon love coming from beyond. Only then can we kind of bloom beyond people pleasing, and we can become authentic in our relationships, truly loving, right? So, love for others really begins, continues, and is daily motivated by a love for God. Because love for God allows us to put our focus away from this person and this friend and this family member. Instead, we're drawing upon it from an eternal relationship that is always going to be there. And this is why I think a lot of relationships, including relationships that I've been in the past, have really, I've had a hard time with them, because I've only sort of drawn upon a source of love from within myself. And that has felt limited at times, or it's felt as if, though I can't continue like this, and I have all these like a bunch of rules as to how I ought to be loved and taken care of and blah 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 blah. No. Only when you sort of know that that can only come from and through other people than this one person that we think that is going to come from, that it can come from all kinds of sources. Only then can we begin to surrender and relax into our relationships. And then it's no longer, you're not going to be a slave anymore to being nice to people. You can then be honest. You can then have deep conversations. You can have hard conversations. You can bring up things that need to be attended to, because you're no longer a slave to niceness. There's one thing to be kind, but to be truly kind, we got to draw upon love from a different place than from people pleasing, right? Because people pleasing is not being kind. It's actually a kind of manipulation. And we don't want to address that. We don't want to attend to that. And we don't want to admit that, but it actually is. Because if we're people pleasing and just being nice for the sake of being nice, because we've been maybe raised to be nice as in like covering up things, we're only doing that if we think that we ought to be a certain way in order to receive and be worthy of love. But when we already know that and we have that relationship with God, then we can draw upon that in our relationships to help us become more and more and more truthful, honest. And you know what? I listened to Jordan Peterson today talk about how you actually can transform your personality and the other person's personality by honesty, by being honest. Being honest, instead of just being nice, can transform your personality, the other person's personality, and even the whole personality of the relationship. That's how powerful it is. And how can we be honest? That's the question. How can we be honest? We can truly be honest when we know that we already have love that is already here. We're going to only be nice, we're going to be nice to people if we think that we need the affirmation, validation, and approval from others. Whereas if we already know that we've got ourselves covered and the other person got themselves covered, we can be honest. And this is the birthplace from connection, vulnerability, for connection, transformation, personality transformation, even for yourself and others, for everyone involved. There's only good things that can ever come from this, truly. So what we ought to discover here, what we gotta soak in, is that our relationships need more than what I call horizontal fixing. Horizontal fixing is this: we look outside of ourselves to people, places, and things to fix, to be nice with others in order to gain approval and validation. We need to go beyond horizontal fixing, and we need to understand that what we actually need in our hearts is a vertical rescue. This is a rescue I'm talking about. It's a rescue of the heart. And it has to happen in a spiritual sense, where we understand that we're not as self-reliant as we think that we are. We gotta open ourselves up to grace, and the grace of the Lord, of God, of the eternal source of love. That enables us then to be able to be truthful, to be honest, to be transparent within our relationships, and more so than anything else, being patient. Being patient. Being patient, it's super hard if we don't have that sense of relationship to the one and only. No one can replace that source. Not your partner, not friends, not whom you're dating. No one, nothing can replace that. Only when you're in that place within your heart, within grace, you can experience patience with people. Then you can be kind, you can express kindness, you can be in kindness, and it's no longer about doing something nice. The shift goes from doing nice things, doing this and that, doing X, Y, and Z in order to kindness, being kind. You're being something. It's the shift in being that enable you to love instead of being nice. Being nice only leads you into people pleasing, which leads you into slavery. Truly, that's what it is. But a funny thing is that we become slaves to ourselves, because there's something within ourselves that is driving that niceness. So it's being able to recognize that. And when we recognize that, we can allow it to transform our heart. And we can begin relying on this relationship with God and being able to draw upon that in the face of uncertainty, in the face of impatience, in the face of anything that any kind of relationship brings. And that is love. That is love. So this and so much more we cover more about within the garden community, where we talk about relationships, where we talk about being able to rely on faith, in order to be courageous within our relationships, within our relationship to our calling, our career, people around us. This relationship with God is so essential to be able to have a sense of kind heart where you are being kind rather than falling into people pleasing and niceness. That's really what this is about. So you can go to bloomingdown.com/waitlist to come onto the waitlist to the community. It's so important to be surrounded by others who are committed to this as well. Yes. Oh, hi, Karine. Nice to meet you and to hear your question. She says, may I ask you about your view about the way of being real and authentic and not? Yes. My point of view about the way of being real and authentic. Yeah. The question about being real and authentic, how do you know when you're real? How do you know when you're authentic? That's a really great question. And I think that instead of looking to and being super confused by that within ourselves, because we're constantly evolving and shifting and growing in so many ways, it's hard to pinpoint what real is. It's hard to pinpoint what authentic is. Because real and authentic can shift from year to year, right? That's at least what we think. But what I've come to discover through my own journey and what I'm beginning to surrender to and kind of abide by now is that there is such a thing as real. There is such a thing as truth. There is such a thing as principles and morals that we can begin to abide by. Because if we use principles that are eternal, that are ancient, then we can begin to draw upon something that is more real. That is, and what I mean by real is that it's more persistent and it's consistent across time and space. And so you might then be like, okay, what are these principles? Well, I have turned to scripture, turned to the Bible, turned to prayer as my form of realness, basically. These are the principles that I now guide my life by. And what it actually does, more than the doing of reading the scriptures, reading the Bible, it's actually how it transforms me and my brain and my heart in the process. So it enables me to be more real, right? To be more real and authentic. Because what is that, right? What is that? What is real? What's authentic? I would say that real is something that is persistent and consistent across time and space. And there are certainly principles for what that is. And that can help us in being able to, then when we draw upon these principles, certain expressions can begin to come through us more. They can come through us and we can begin to allow the sense of uniqueness of our spirit meet the principles, the eternal and ancient principles. And then in that sort of connection right there, in that meeting, that's when I would say that the Holy Spirit evokes something in us that allows us to be real, to be true, to be able to express truthfully. I love this other question too. How do you view intuition? I've had quite a bit of a journey with intuition and with my own intuition. And how I would like to bring it up is that you can imagine it like this. We have a ladder. I call it the in ladder. It's because all these three things that I'm going to mention start on IN. So first you have instinct, first ladder, right? That's That's what we all got. Even animals got instinct. We got an instinct that is so subconscious and so in our amygdala that we don't even need to think about it. We just got an instinct. And beyond that, we've got intuition, right? This is this sort of sixth sense that we can have. And then beyond that, we have the intellect, which is our reason in combination then with intuition. And ultimately, it should be also with the instinct. So when we're able to actually then have sort of a bridge between instinct, intuition, and intellect, we can begin to experience more wholeness. Because intellect, right? An intellect without intuition is just rational garbage, truly. Like it will lead you onto a path where you're just a robot. You're sort of just like, you're just doing a lot of the things that have already been done. Maybe you're just looking to others for what you ought to do as logical, and living just solely logically without a connection to your intuition and the instinct. It's not fulfilling. It's empty because we've been trying to copy others. So then, how do you view intuition? Well, the intuition comes in as this, you might call it then sixth sense, but you might also, I would say, call it's an internal revelation. That's how I see it now. You have a revelation, and you can have several revelations upon more revelations upon more revelations. And these are the things. This is actually, I believe, also the last book in the Bible, Revelations. And I think that intuition is something that we can uncover more and more and more once we actually then either climb beyond our instinct, or we are able to smash through the intellect. You see what I mean? There's different ways to come to intuition. You can come from your instinct and see that the instinct won't take you many places. It can make you a slave to your own physical temptations, right? That's what instinct can do. It can lead you down a path of total darkness. But I think that the intellect can do that as well. So it's finding that middle ground, right, between instinct, intuition, and the intellect. That's how I view intuition now. It's sort of like a gateway to this realm beyond this physical realm. However, I want to say that it is not wise to just blindly follow one's intuition, because a lot of the times, sometimes intuition can be connected to we can sometimes mix intuition with trauma responses, and we can mix it with like a lot of other coping mechanisms, right? So it's super, super interesting how we need to stay super aware of whether we're following our instinct, our intuition, or our intellect. And what we ought to do if we want to grow in maturity and grow in God is being able to, and then also grow in love, just circling back to love here, is that we gotta actually find a way to bridge the instinct, intuition, and intellect. And this is how we're able to love. This is how we're able to love fully and eternally, unconditionally. Because if we only abide by being nice, that love is being nice, then we're doing it from the place of the intellect, right? That makes sense. Yes. So thanks for those questions. I love being interactive on here. One more question. And what is Me, the feeling of self. Me, the feeling of self. Me is definitely a sort of intertwined concept that we tend to have once we come to consciousness, right? Once you come to consciousness, once you're born, now you have a me. You're a soul in a human body. When you're a soul in a human body or in a body itself, then you have a me. However, you don't have a me until later. Like, you can't conceptualize yourself, myself, until later. I believe around 3 or something, you begin to sort of rebel a little bit against other people around you, because you realize that, okay, I am myself, but there are people around me that want their way and they're trying to impose on me what I ought to do. And now you begin to rebel. So it's in and around this time that you actually develop yourself, I would say, or you actually have a concept that you're a self. Now, what's actually happening though during like our lifetime is that some people develop their conscience, their consciousness to a point where they're able to realize that yes, it's myself. There's also others, and I can like find respect for myself and others. Some people find more respect to others because they have to live in and around other people and meet other people's needs even before their own, because they might live in emotionally unavailable homes or narcissistic homes or something like that. And so you then begin putting yourself in the back seat. And so it becomes more about others and tuning into others than realizing that you also have a self. So that can be really dangerous, actually, because then you fall into codependent dynamics. But you can also have the opposite, that you have, let's say, people around you growing up who's so attending to you and like a helicopter parent or whatever, that's just like trying to be in control of your road instead of preparing you for the road. They're trying to control the road itself. And when that's happening, then you actually then develop a heightened self, like a narcissistic sort of ego. And that's why we tend to have people that lean more towards the codependent edge and more towards the narcissistic edge, because we have a different relationship to ourselves, to the self. So coming back to the question full circle about what is me, the feeling of self, I would say that it's a conception of self, that we have a conception of self that probably was developed when we were in around 3 and growing up. That's when we develop that sense of conception of what that self is. And you want to become aware of what kind of sort of dynamics were in and around you around that time, so that you can know where you're at this spectrum here, more towards the codependent, people pleasing, being nice to people, or whether you're more towards the sort of selfish side, which it's easy to lean towards that. And you can actually shift from dynamic to dynamic in your relationships as well. So that's the answer that I have for you there about me, the feeling of self. Thank you, Karine, for your engagement and your questions. I appreciate it. And thank you for being here. To everyone else as well. I hope that this added value to you today. And now I'm about to meet my love who's coming here, and we're gonna go to Tromsø up north tomorrow with Grace, our dog, our little puppy. So I'm so excited to meet them. But I keep coming back to this, right? I just want to circle it back around to have the bottom line be this: in order for you to love someone, In order for you to truly love someone, you need to be able to put God above all else, about everyone else, because only when you draw from that kind of love, you'll be able to love your neighbor as yourself. That's it. And then you won't be a slave to the niceness syndrome. Dante said, hello, sister in Christ. Yeah, hello to you too. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.